to another edition of Center Stage Sweets. Today we're going to be talking about the classic Disney film turned Broadway musical, Mary Poppins. And with a number like Spoonful of Sugar, how could I not be making the practically perfect in every way sugar cookie? So let's get started. In my large mixing bowl here, I have 2 sticks of room temperature butter and 2 cups of sugar, and we're going to cream those together to get started. When I was trying to figure out this recipe and decide what I wanted to make, I started talking with my lovely fiance about great foods that are simple, but just when they're done right, they really are kind of perfect. And that's when we started talking about things like a good chocolate chip cookie or a grilled cheese, like simple things like that. And I started thinking about sugar cookies and how they're so simple, they're just absolutely buttery and delicious. And that's when I started thinking, what a perfect way to honor that particular musical. Our sugar and butter are creamed together now. We're going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and we're going to add in 2 eggs. Now I always keep repeating this, but make sure you crack your eggs and empty them into something other than the dough, just in case there's an eggshell or an imperfection in the egg. And we're going to add them in one at a time. Our eggs are now completely mixed into our sugar and butter mixture. We're gonna start adding our dry ingredients. So I have pre-sifted 4 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar, and 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. And we're gonna add this in 3 batches. That way it has a chance to really fully incorporate, but you don't have to overwork your dough. And you definitely don't wanna overwork your dough. That's what gives you tough cookies, and we want light, fluffy, buttery cookies. So let's get started. Start with about 1/3 of the flour mixture. And you want to mix until it's just incorporated, and in between each addition you definitely want to make sure that you scrape down the sides of your bowl. As you can see, there's a lot of flour around the edge. We want to make sure we get that and it's fully incorporated. In the last bit of flour, the dough might seem a little bit harder to work with. That's okay. Just keep going until it fully blends in. I promise it will. Now that our dough is fully mixed together, and again, you just mix it until it's incorporated. Don't overdo it so it doesn't get tough. We're gonna just try to scrape these beaters the best we can because we don't wanna lose any of this cookie dough. Before we roll out our cookies, I wanna talk about prepping your tray. So we've got a cookie sheet here. Now this is technically a non-stick sheet, but I still like to put down a piece of parchment paper on my cookie trays. It just makes for easier cleanup in the end and very easy removal, because let's face it, non-stick doesn't stay non-stick forever. To make our cookies, we're gonna take our golf ball or meatball size scoops so that they're uniform in size. If you don't have scoops, I highly suggest making a sample ball. That's what my mom used to call them when we were kids. Make a sample ball, put it on a plate, and don't cook that cookie until the last tray so that you can measure all the other cookies up against it. That way you know that they'll all be uniform in shape and size. So we're gonna use that scoop, and then I have in this bowl 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna scoop out our dough, roll it into balls, and then roll those balls in the sugar. So on the outside, these cookies will have a nice little crunch, the sugary crunch when you first bite into them, and then that yummy, doughy, fluffy cookie on the inside. So I would highly suggest removing any jewelry before starting this because it does get a little messy. So you want to take a scoop and make sure you kind of like scrape the edges down off of it, and you really want to have a level scoop so everything really is uniform in size. The nice part is they come out almost in a ball. Sometimes I just kind of roll them a little bit just to make them a little bit tighter of a ball, and then drop them in the sugar and just kind of toss them around in there so that the whole thing is coated, and then onto your tray it goes. So for those of you who haven't seen the musical of Mary Poppins before, it is very similar to the movie, but there are some key differences. The writers of the musical decided to go back to the original source material and add in some things. Like there is, I have to say, a very creepy number at the end of Act 1, right before she flies for the first time, where a bunch of toys come to life, which I don't really remember from the film. And there's also a sequence with like a second, like, evil nanny, I guess you could call her, in Act 2 that don't appear in the film. There's also some bits from the film that don't happen in the stage show. So definitely worth checking out just to see the differences. You'll notice on the tray that I am definitely leaving a little bit of space in between these cookies. They're gonna spread a little bit, not a ton. So you don't have to really worry about them starting to touch as they cook, because we have so much flour and they're gonna stay nice and fat, but you do still wanna make sure that you give them a little bit of space on that tray. I've preheated the oven to 375 degrees. We're gonna put them in one tray at a time. Some people like to put in 2 trays at a time just to make things move a little bit quicker. I find that sometimes the cookies don't bake as evenly if you do that, so I try to do 1 tray at a time. These are gonna go in for 8 to 11 minutes depending on your oven. If you don't have a ton of cookie sheets, or maybe you only have 1, but you wanna keep things moving, I highly suggest getting a plate out like this and just continue working on forming the balls until your tray is out of the oven. And then you have them ready to go when your tray is cool, and you can move the cookies onto a wire rack and you can replace them with the next set. Also, if your dough gets a little tacky and hard to work with, you can also pop it in the fridge for about maybe 10-15 minutes, and that'll help harden it back up and make it a little bit easier to work with. These cookies took just about 8 minutes in the oven. They've been sitting on the tray for about another 2 to 3. So now we're gonna transfer them from the cookie sheet to a wire rack. And you definitely wanna do this with a flat spatula so that you don't burn yourselves and so you don't necessarily get your hands all over other people's cookies. Hygiene, you know. And we're gonna let them sit on the wire rack until they've cooled completely. Our cookies have all come out of the oven, they've cooled, and they are ready to be devoured. So I have to give them a taste. They're so good. They are buttery and fluffy, and they do have that nice little crunch of the sugar on the outside because we coated them all the way around with the sugar before baking. They're like little buttery clouds. Oh, so good. So we hope you get a chance to make these. If you do, please share your pictures on Instagram and be sure to tag us at Center Stage Sweets, and be sure to follow us. Also, if you like these videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out centerstagesweets.com for more recipes. See you next time.